Hi guys, welcome to my guide on 61 Harbinger. So Harbinger recently got reworked and quite a few things changed, and now it is more than definitely a raid viable spec. In terms of its DPS ranking, in my personal experience, 54 Harp does seem to edge it out, but 61 Harp does have some qualities over 54 Harp and should definitely be a spec which every mage should be able to play and have in their specs. Okay, so before I start, I want to make a small disclaimer. This is a guide which is aimed at more at the beginner to intermediate level of mages, and it isn't really meant for those who are looking to squeeze out every little ounce of DPS that they can. It can be played more optimally, but I don't feel a video guide is the right way to teach people how to do that, so I'm going to keep it to a more basic level. That being said, if you play it the way I'm going to teach you, you're going to be able to do every tier of content to a good standard, so don't worry about that. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to look into the soul tree. So obviously it's 61 Harbinger. Then for the off souls, we have Stormcaller taking 13 points, 5 in Storm Energy, 5 in Psychogenesis, 2 in Conductive Medium, and 1 in Hailstorm, and the remaining 2 points going to Elementalist in Biting Cold. For the masteries, we are taking Ethereal Blast, Sparking Destruction, Mental Cynosure, Rejuvenating Presence, and Arcanist Shield. But the 61 mastery, I should add, isn't important to the DPS, so you can pick and choose which one you feel is more important for the situation you're in. But the shield I find is almost always better. Oh, sorry, I do take time to copy it down. Pause the video here if you need some time. So the next thing is the macros that we're going to be using. Now there are a lot of macros in the spec, simply because the spec has a mechanic with Charge Blade, and instead of manually managing it, we set up the macros so it does all the work for you. So that's why you're going to have to use a lot of macros in the spec. And also, if you see in your general chat tab, when you hit the dummies or in a fight, it's going to cause a huge amount of spam. This doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the macros, it's just the way it is, and you have to deal with it and make new chat tabs if you want to filter it out. Okay, so the macros are in the description. Please copy them into your macro book. There's essentially the spam macro, which I've labeled, and also the proc macro, and then there's also individual macros for each of the abilities you're going to be casting. So example, Lucent Slash, Tempest Winds, Piercing Beam, Blazing Lights, and also Rending Slash one, and also a beginning macro. These are all important macros which you need to have. So, and in addition, make sure you've keybound Imperium Ascension, because we obviously want that. And the buffs that we use are Eldritch Armor and Reaper's Blade. So make sure those are on your bar and obviously up and running. So the next thing is we need to have a way of tracking our dots and our debuffs and our buffs. So the Rift UI is kind of horrible for tracking things while you're DPSing, because the buffs, your self buffs, go on the top right and don't have any actual order to them. It's just the one that goes up first. And then also on your target, it tracks it here, which isn't very nice. So what I use and what most raiders use is an add-on called Career Alert. If you've heard of it, then great. Copy down the code which I've added and it will give you the alert. If you haven't heard of it, then you want to download it. I've got the link. And then once you've downloaded, you want to type in /K alert, and then you want to go find the set which you want to use in, and then go import set, and then copy and paste the code which I have in the description and here, and then import, and you should get these 5 alerts. And then if you then go click edit layout, and you can click and drag and move these alerts to where you want them. And these are what we're going to be using to play the spec and track what we need. Okay, so once you've got those up, then we have everything we need to start actually learning how to play it properly. So I'm going to talk the basics of what you do in Harbinger. So Harbinger is essentially a spec which you just have to keep up certain debuffs on your target and then use your abilities, your high damaging abilities on cooldown. But your priority is mainly dealt with your macros. So really what you have to do is keep up the buffs and debuffs, keeping an eye on them on your K alerts, and then use the right macros at the right time and hit Tempest Winds at the right time, which I'll go on to explain. But to begin with, we're going to go into the buffs and debuffs. So your first one is Piercing Beam. So for this, we just use the Piercing Beam macro. As you can see, it's a 30-second duration here with the K alert. And for this, we simply want to refresh it after it falls off. Okay? So our next one is Rending Slash. So when we cast Rending Slash, it puts a stack on. Each stack increases the damage the target takes from you by 3%, and we want to keep this at 3 stacks at all times. This is only really very important at the start of the fight because Rending Slash is in our spam macro and we're going to be casting it a lot during the fight, so we don't really need to manually look after this. But as I said, you keep this up at the start of the fight, and there are times if you're cleaving or you're just somehow being unlucky that it might nearly fall off. So you want to pay attention to it if it gets to a low number and just refresh it with Rending Slash. Okay, then we have our dot, which is Blazing Light. Blazing Light is just a damaging dot, but it's slightly different in the way that we refresh it. We don't refresh it by casting Blazing Light again. We refresh it by using our Lucent Slash macro, which just casts Lucent Slash. Now it's important to note with Lucent Slash has large animation, and the damage and the reapplication of Blazing Light only happens at the end of the animation. So when we press it, you see, I press it, and the damage comes after, and he does a large swing of the scythe, or whatever you want to call it, and does the damage at the end. So this means with refreshing the dot, we never want to let it go to 0. We need to cast Lucent Slash at either 2 to 1 seconds left on Blazing Light to refresh it. Okay. And then the last buff that we have is Conductive Medium. Now Conductive Medium is a buff on yourself which increases your damage by 2% for each stack. During your normal rotation, it will get refreshed several times, but there are also times where it will fall off if you don't do anything to manage it. Now, the way we refresh it is by having a keybind for Charge Blade, and when it gets to low, so let's say 2 seconds, we want to just double tap Charge Blade, and this will refresh Conductive Medium. So as a quick recap, we kept a Piercing Beam, we recast it when it falls off. Rending Slash, we make sure it's always at 3 stacks. We only need to really pay attention at the start of the fight or when we're cleaving, because otherwise it gets refreshed by itself. And then we have Blazing Light, which we refresh at 2 to 1 seconds using Lucent Slash. And of course, Conductive Medium, we double tap Charge Blade. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how we deal our damage. So the main mechanic that Harbinger has is our Eldritch Armor and Eldritch Gift procs. And I'm going to talk about Eldritch Gift procs as just simply procs from now on. So when we use slashing attacks, I'll just show you on the dummy, we have a chance to get a reactive, which you'll see in a second, if it ever happens. Here, you see this Eldritch Gift icon? This means the next cast time ability that we use will be instant cast. So when that happens, we want to consume it by using our Proc macro, which, as you see, it's in the description. You should have copied it in and put on your bar. And all our main slashing attacks are put in our spam macro. So the idea is that, of course, we keep up our buffs and debuffs, so Piercing Beam, 3 stacks of Rending, and I'm going to throw on Blazing Light as well. And the idea is that we want to use our procs as soon as we get an Eldritch Gift proc that appears on our UI. And then when we don't have a proc, we want to just revert back to our spam macro. So as you see, I have my proc, I use it with the proc macro, and then I go back to spam macro. I've got a proc, use it with the proc macro. It's pretty simple. The next thing we have is our damaging ability, Tempest Winds. Now, Tempest Winds is a 3-second channel, which is a strong ability. The way we want to deal with it is that we want to look at the duration of our Blazing Light, and we want to look at the cooldown of Vorpal Slash. Now, with Blazing Light, we want to make sure we have more than 4 seconds left on Blazing Light. And with Vorpal Slash, we want to make sure that Vorpal Slash isn't coming off cooldown within 3 seconds. If it isn't coming off cooldown within 3 seconds, we want to save Tempest Winds until after our Vorpal Slash. Right, so yeah, as you see, we've got Vorpal Slash on cooldown, Blazing Light, 5 seconds left, we'll use Tempest Winds. And that's essentially how you want to, that's all you have to do. So use procs when you get them, use a spam macro when you don't have a proc, and keep up your buffs and debuffs, which we already know how to do, and use Tempest Winds when you've got 4 more seconds on Blazing Light and your Vorpal Slash has more than 3 seconds left on this cooldown. Okay? That's pretty much it. And next we'll talk about Imperium Ascension. Right, now we're going to move on to Imperium Ascension and how we should be using it. The gist of it is that we want to be using it when we've got our 3 stacks and Piercing Beam up, and we want to time it at the same time as Lava Field, so it gains as much damage as possible. So this is really important at the start of the fight, but throughout the rest of the fight we're essentially just doing the same and timing it with Lava Field. But at the start we want to get down Piercing Beam and 3 stacks as quickly as possible, and then go into Imperium Ascension and then start offloading our burst. Okay? So I'm going to talk through how we do this correctly. So I'm going to start off by doing it slowly while talking you through it, and then I'm going to show it how it's done quickly, like using every global cooldown as it comes. So as I said, the gist is we have our beginning macro. So all this is just Piercing Beam and Rending Slash. Okay, and so we want to press this macro 4 times so we get our Piercing Beam in 3 stacks, as you see here. Okay, so I get my 3 stacks, right? And then now I want to go Imperium Ascension, and I want to use my first proc. And then here I want to use my spam, okay, 3 times, and then proc into Tempest Winds, okay? And then I want to use my spam again, refresh my rending, and then proc, Blazing Light, and then we go into normal, alright? So that was really slow, and I almost lost my Rending Slash stacks because I went so slow, but that would never happen. Okay, but that is the order which you want to cast your abilities. So you essentially do 3 procs. So after the first proc, you do your spam for 3 times, and then you should by then hopefully have your second proc. And then after your second proc, you do Tempest Winds, and then you spam after that, and then you get your third proc, use your third proc, and then use Blazing Light. And then you go back, then you just do everything like it's normal. Okay, so now I'm going to do that quickly, alright, just to show you again. So let me just get in range because I ran off for no reason. Here we go. Okay, so starting 3 stacks. Use my proc, and then Tempest. Then I use my spam. Okay. Then the Blazing. Okay, and that's how you do it ideally. The last thing I want to talk about in this guide is Blade Mark. Blade Mark is a really strong skill, and what it does is if you place it on a target, any single target attack which you do on a different target gets applied to the target which you place Blade Mark on. So it essentially doubles the damage which you are dealing with single target attacks, and it's obviously very good on 2 target situations. The way I deal with Blade Mark, and I feel it's one of the best ways to do it, there are other ways, but this is how I'm going to do it, is that you want to put the target which you want to Blade Mark on focus, and you make a macro for Blade Mark which has cast that focus Blade Mark. I have the macro included in the description as well. And you simply, on your main target, you always want to make sure you have Piercing Beam and 3 stacks of Rending Slash. And once you've got them up, make sure you have line of sight on your focus target for blade mark, because you have to be facing the target with your blade mark, and then you just apply it and then go on with your single target rotation, not really changing anything. So it's pretty simple and quite obvious, but yeah. In a raid setting, sometimes like the target which you want to blade mark actually spawns like halfway through the fight, so you can't really click on it and put it on focus. It doesn't really make a difference. What you can do, so you never have to change the target from your main target, is that you get your raid leader or whoever can mark in the raid to mark the target as 1, and then you make a macro which has focus at mark 1 in, and then you press that macro, and then again you make sure you're facing the focus target, and then you can use blade mark, and you never have to the blade mark macro, and you never have to change target, which is quite nice. Right, so that sums up everything which I'm going to include in this guide. You might be wondering, what do I do if I AoE? It's simply turn on Luminous Weapon, it's a weapon buff, and spam Lucent Slash. But of course, you shouldn't really be AoEing too much in 61 Harb. If you need to do a lot of AoE damage, you should just switch to 61 Stormcaller. Apart from that, that's everything. I hope you guys found this guide useful. It's my first, so please go easy on me. But if you've got some constructive feedback, please add it in the comments. Also, if you did like it and would like to see more content from me, put a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. If there's like a lot of interest, I will probably make more guides specifically on stuff like 54 Harb and 61 Pyromancer, and maybe 61 Stormcaller as well. Okay, thank you for watching.